Like, it just felt
I
it
think
out.
we were just feeling it out. Like, I don't actually remember listening to any other music that day. Like, I think we just had the idea and then, yeah. I mean, the other thing about that session in particular was that it was, I think, one of the first studio days that I'd done since the first round of lockdowns in Melbourne. And I think we were all just feeling really excited about being back in a studio and making something with other people that wasn't on Zoom. And I think there was just like a lot of excitement about every idea that happened that day.
Yeah, so fun. I talked about like, the amount of stuff, or we both talked about the amount of genres that, you're working on. How do you, what are you listening to? How do you keep your palette so vast?
It's funny. I feel like a lot of the music that I listen to is not super diverse, like I feel like, and I think that's partly because most of what I'm listening to is what I'm making. And at the end of like a long studio day, I'm not like getting home and putting on a record and sitting down and listening to it, like I find that the best thing that I can do, unfortunately, because I like, listening to music is one of my favorite things to do, but the best thing that I can do to keep things fresh is to give myself time without headphones on or without a speaker and, just kind of like living in the world. But I don't know, like some of my favorite bands kind of from high school and stuff that I feel like I've really carried with me and learned a lot from are like Death Cab for Cutie and Phoenix and Charlie XCX. And, I was like a massive Taylor Swift fan and still am. I think that...
Wow. That's already like a massive gamut of genres, right?
Yeah,
there.
I guess, know what I mean? Like, I guess so. But I feel like they're all kind of artists that you would maybe read about on the same... Or you would find them on a similar Spotify playlist or something maybe. And I feel like I'm always trying
I feel like Taylor Swift and Death Cab for Cutie are on very different playlists, but that's just me, I don't know. Like they're both great in completely different ways. Like high school Ben would have listened to Death Cab for Cutie and not Taylor Swift. Ben today will listen to both, obviously, but like...
True. Yeah. I mean, I remember like the first time that a friend told me about Taylor Swift being quote unquote cool and listening to that 1989 record and just thinking, this is the best thing ever. And I think until that point, I was obviously like aware of the big songs and stuff like that. But as someone who was like really living in indie rock, Death Cab world, like it wasn't really registering. But I think things just have a way of like, I don't know, like I reckon Jack Antonoff was probably listening to Death Cab in high school, like I feel like a lot of those influences are kind of finding their way into popular music. I mean, not that wasn't popular music to start with, but I feel like everything's kind of...
rock music is totally coming back. And actually I've been talking about this with a couple of people recently, how like the electric guitars are back in season,
Yeah,
which is
I
really
don't think
really
I've
nice.
finished a song without guitars on it at all this year. I think everything's been guitar music in one way or another. I mean, even in like the kind of rap world at the moment, I feel like the style is emo band guitar riffs and then all of the other, like trap drums.
Trap hats.
Stuff. Yeah.
It's so funny. Sick. Well, it's good for guys like us who grew up with, electric guitars and stuff, We know what that's supposed to sound like, you know what I mean? That's to our benefit. Speaking of instruments, do you have any instruments that are, would you say go-tos or sounds that like, you're looking to on a typical, session to get you inspired? Any specific instruments?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I always go to for, I don't know if I would say always, but my Juno 6 is probably the most used keyboard in the studio. I feel like to me, that keyboard just sounds like all the music that I love. And it's
so fun.
Yeah, it's just the best. Recently, I bought an OP1, which I've been really loving. I feel like that's been it doesn't do anything that you couldn't do in Ableton, but it's just there. It's so immediate. Yeah, I feel like I've been finding a lot of cool ideas recently in that space. Also because it's quite hard to use and I'm not sure if I completely know how to use it yet, but I feel like that kind of, sets me up for just kind of happening upon cool sounds and ways of doing things. And then
Yeah, that seems to be like the the reason to use analog keys is just the tactile thing. It's immediate, like playing a guitar. Where you just can. It's more inspiring than going on choosing contact 5, opening up whatever it is.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the other thing is that it just creates, I don't know, like I don't think I've ever finished a song without Ableton. Like I've never really worked and I don't know if many people my age actually have like finished music in the analog domain entirely, but I feel like I'm always trying to make things not sound like Ableton, and maybe like playing something in on a Juno instead of programming it on the, Juno plugin is a way of doing that. And I feel like if you kind of take that mentality with you across a whole song, you can kind of start to achieve it not really sounding like the computer.
Yeah, I think that's the modern sound is, we're using these computers, but it's not just staying in the computer. That was like 20 years ago. Like we have to incorporate like some analog or just like real instruments to give it that kind of hybrid that feels so rich and, the best of both worlds,
I mean, I do think that it's more about the approach than the actual analog nature of the thing, like I think I could get there playing through the whole song start to finish on a MIDI keyboard that's playing, that's got a Juno patch open or something, or using Lindrum samples as opposed to like the real Lindrum that's at the studio, or like, playing something or programming a part and then running it out through a guitar pedal as opposed to like a, $5,000 tape delay or a, really expensive other piece of outboard gear or something. Like I don't think it has to be a process where there's like a cost barrier involved.
Yeah. It's just it's the feel, it's the approach.
Yeah, totally.
I cut you off. You're about to say something else about maybe another instrument or something.
Oh yeah, I guess guitar pedals. Like I feel like I always have, my pedal boards on the patch bay, and there's kind of always that's like a line that's always open on my interface. And I think sending things through guitar pedals has become a really big part of my workflow. My friend Nick just built me this awesome big studio board with heaps of stuff on it, and there's a few pedals that do that kind of like granular pitch shifting looping thing. Like there's a Chase Bliss Mood and there's a Montreal Counter 5 and a couple other bits like that. And I feel like, yeah, it's not uncommon to be like singing a part into the OP1 mic and sending it out through those pedals and just kind of like making some weird loop that forms the kind of like basis of a part or a song or something like that.
Super fun. Yeah. I feel like guitar pedals are like the cheapest way to get a vibe.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I feel like all of that stuff feels like I'm experimenting and feels like I'm just like playing with cool sounds as opposed to sitting at my computer and programming, which has the same feeling as like answering emails,
Wow, that's crazy.
And
that's,
and I think
that's a big difference.
Important for the studio to feel fun. Otherwise, I would just find another job if I didn't enjoy it,
Wow, I love it. Can we talk a little bit about your approach to remixing? Do you have a philosophy when a song comes in, or a general approach when you're getting started?
Yeah, my favorite remixes to do are the ones where I haven't heard the song before. Like it might be an artist that I know and they say, do you want to remix my new song? Or like, songs that come to me that I'm not already familiar with, because in those instances, I just kind of like drag in the vocal stem and, set the tempo and stuff, but without having ever heard the chord progression or, knowing which section is the pre and the chorus and the post. Like, I feel like being really free to just interpret it how you want is my favorite way to do it.
I love it. Yeah, you're detached from the original production.
Yeah, because I guess like my approach to making music isn't this like super avant-garde. Like I'm not trying to make things that sound super experimental in that way. Like I think I always just land in a place where it's like just producing things that sound the way that my band sounds and the way that I like to make things, but kind of having that distance from the original song makes it easy to be experimental in terms of just the process.
Yeah. Any other ideas or things that you're thinking about when it comes to remixing?
I think I use remixing as a way just thinking about like the process, like I use it as a way to get better at drum programming, really, because I feel like in sessions, yeah, it's not fun to have someone sitting next to you at the desk and just be like looking through samples or kind of trying different processing chains and parallel combinations and stuff like that. But I feel like often with remixing, like I've got just that time to myself in the studio to try stuff. And it's pretty common.
Like me time.
Totally.
Let's do this.
Yeah, it's a good like just like good professional development, you know? Like you've got time on your own in the studio to just like get better at stuff and find new ways to do things. And it's pretty common that I'll take things that I've figured out from those remixes into sessions.
Love it. So you're mostly mixing the productions that you work on? Like actual mixing?
No, I wish I was. I'm starting to, but for the most part, I'm sending stems at the moment. I feel like it's just not something that I've been great at until I feel like recently I've got kind of okay at it. So it's been fun to start doing it a bit more. But yeah, for the most part, I'm sending things off to be mixed.
Nice. You know, how are you sending off those stems? Like, how wet are they? Like, are you sending it with all your reverbs, compression? Like,
yeah,
I've heard like an array of answers to this. Like, you know,
I'm sending everything wet and then a dry vocal, and I think I've landed on that after just years of getting to like revision 7 or revision 8 on a mix, and just the notes ending up being, "Can you just use my wet version?" and here's my processing chain and like just do this. And I feel like as I've got better at mixing, I've been more confident in sending wet stems, and then the mixes come back sounding closer to how I want them to. Because I feel like the line between production and mixing has become more and more blurred over time. And I feel like I've always been doing the kind of creative part of the mixing. And really just like having someone to help with just frequency distribution and levels and, you know, headroom and kind of the more technical considerations has been what I've needed a bit of help with. But I think over time, like, you know, I'll get a mix back and I'll kind of pull it up in Ableton and compare it to mine and try and figure out what they've done that's improved it or been able to get it louder or whatever they've kind of brought to it. And I think doing that over time has made me better at it.
That's so cool. Yeah, you're able to kind of see the difference between what you did versus them, you know, how they cleared the space, maybe whatever it was. Like,
yeah. And I think a nice thing about producing, or like, I feel like in the last couple years, you know, producing for artists that have budgets to work with great mixers has been that I've been able to learn from a lot of great mixers.
Yeah. So you messaged me after Andrew Mari's episode. Have you used him as a mixer?
Yeah. So he actually mixed the last Japanese Wallpaper song.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Which, yeah, I just think he's awesome. We have a mutual friend in Chris Waller who put me onto him. And yeah.
Death Cab for Cutie.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously Chris and Andrew have a really long kind of history and stuff. But yeah, his mix was awesome.
Amazing. Do you have like a list of a bunch of mixers that you're using, or it's more like condensed?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of 2 or 3 people that I send things to when it's my choice, depending on what the music is. For the most part, I work with Andre Ehrman, who's in Melbourne as well. But often the artist kind of has their own idea about where they want to send something, and I'm usually like, if they have some credits that I recognize, and if it seems like the stuff that they're doing is like of a professional standard, then it's great. And it's a good opportunity to meet new people. And I mean, recently I've been working with an artist who was like, I want to use this guy, Jeff Swan, and I didn't really know who he was, but I think he used to be Spike Stent's assistant or something. And we just